It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
We made it. Welcome in to another edition of Musso at the box. The long dreaded off season is over. We have made it. It's opening day. LSU, they take back to the diamond today to start the 2024 season. 2 p.m. out at Alex Box Stadium. They will face VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, and we have you covered with everything you need to know for this weekend against VMI and Central Arkansas right here on Musso at the Box. I could not be more fired up to be here today with you to talk about it all. This is my favorite day of the year. I am not exaggerating. If you have listened to the show in years prior, you know that. Opening day, when LSU opens their baseball season, it is my favorite day of the calendar year. Not Christmas, not my birthday, not Thanksgiving, not LSU opening day. That is my favorite day of the entire year. I look forward to it from the moment the season ends in June, whenever that may be, to when it arrives. And it's here today, and I'm fired up, man. So we got a lot to get to on this show. The way it will be structured, we will preview VMI, we will preview Central Arkansas, we go through starting pitching matchups, key players on each team, key matchups for the weekend, what I want to see out of LSU on the weekend, and wrap it up with a prediction. Since you have 4 games technically in this weekend, when we're back here on Monday, we'll recap 3 of them and give you a thumbnail on Monday afternoon's game and send you on your way. But for now, it's time to talk LSU versus VMI and versus Central Arkansas. So get subscribed up to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Smash that like button. If you're listening on a podcast app, go ahead and subscribe there as well. Anywhere you get your podcasts, Musso at the Box is there. And let's get right down to it, shall we? So LSU today will face VMI. That's where I want to start. VMI, they're out of the SoCon Conference. LSU has never lost to a SoCon Conference team that's redundant, to a SoCon team in their history. This will be the first meeting between the Tigers and the Keydets in their history, and it should be a pretty good one. There's a one massive matchup to watch that we're going to get to between LSU's pitching staff and VMI's lineup, but I want to start here, a little background on Virginia Military Institute. They finished last year 26-29 overall. They were an elite offensive team, top 5 in the country, actually number 5 in the country in batting average last year at .322, top 25 in doubles, top 25 in slugging. They littered the top 25 and on base percentage. They littered the top 25 offensively. So we'll definitely dive deeper into there. On the mound, it was definitely more of a struggle. It was a revolving door in and out of the starting rotation, which, I mean, I guess you kind of expect it. They didn't even really have a number 1, let alone a number 2 or a number 3. There were 16 different players that started a game last year for VMI. To compare that to LSU had 10, which I get it. I know that, the status of the program's not the same, but still 16 different guys starting a game for you was very much in flux. They're going to look to remedy that a little bit here this season. So let's start there. Let's start with the pitching matchup for this game. And VMI, they are going to send Trey Morgan to the mound today. Trey Morgan to the mound today. Not that Trey Morgan, different Trey Morgan entirely, but this guy is a really nice player. 2-way guy, outfielder, was named second team all SoCon preseason as the 2-way player. Left-handed arm is Morgan. He stands 5'10", weighs 170 pounds. Redshirt senior, so a very veteran guy. Last season on the bump, Morgan appeared in 16 different games with 6 starts. He had a 2-2 record and an ERA of 5.58. Did total 40 in the third innings pitched. He's not going to overpower you. In those 40 in the third innings, 22 strikeouts. So he's very much that junk ball lefty that we've seen tie up an LSU lineup time and time again. Where this could be very different, we talked about this in the offensive preview. LSU's not as left-handed heavy in their lineup this year, or at least they shouldn't be. We'll see, kind of how that goes, but they'll be facing Trey Morgan. Again, not that Trey Morgan, much different Trey Morgan, on the bump. So not going to overpower you. Did have a low walk total, so he's in the zone as well. I mean, that's where the success kind of comes from. The bugaboo for him, though, because, I mean, look, you look at it and you say, 16 walks and 40 in the third innings. That's not too bad. Where'd the high ERA come from? The high ERA came from the hits. The opponent hit 337 off of Morgan last season. So LSU, while he's that crafty junk ball lefty, he's in the zone, and he's one of them that you should look to attack early and often. Maybe sometimes you have to kind of feel those type guys out. At least last year, he was not that type of guy. So look for LSU to be aggressive early in the count against him, because he's going to be in the zone, and teams did not struggle finding the barrel against him last season. Now, for LSU, we know it will be Thatcher Hurd getting the opening day start, the opening day nod there for the defending national champions. Hurd last season, 8-3 overall, a 5.68 ERA. We went through the numbers. They were much, much better down the stretch last year for LSU. 84 strikeouts and 63 in the third innings, 40 walks. I am fired up, man, to see Thatcher Hurd face this VMI team, because it's going to be a legit test. It is going to be a legit test. Right off the top there, I told you they were awesome offensively last year. Number 5 in batting average, and in the top 25 in slugging and doubles and on base and all those. And that's significant because they're back. Go through it. Go through that lineup last year from VMI. They're back. Cole Jenkins, back. Cole Garrett, back. Ty Swaim, back. Trey Morgan, back. Grayson Fitzwater, back. Brett Cook, back. Justin Starkey, back. Y'all, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 9 who were everyday starters. Everyone we just went through there started 50 or more games for this team. They played 55. And they're back. This is going to be a legitimate test for LSU pitching. You're going to find out how close Thatcher Hurd is to the end of last season, to postseason Thatcher Hurd and College World Series Thatcher Hurd than he was to the start of last season. I think it's going to go very well for him. I really do. But it won't come without some struggle. It won't come without some adversity, and I love that because we get to see how he will handle that immediately. Let's talk about some of the key players that do return in that lineup and not just name them. And it's going to start with Justin Starkey. Justin Starkey is a legitimate prospect on this VMI team. D1 Baseball ranked him as the 5th best third baseman in all of college baseball. This is a legitimate draftable guy from that team. Hit 392 last season, 13 homers and 52 RBI. The 13 homers tied for the team lead. The 52 RBI were second on the team. You wrap that all into one, and Justin Starkey was named the preseason SoCon Player of the Year, also first team All-SoCon, as you might imagine. He is a legitimate guy. He is the guy you cannot let beat you. If LSU is in a close game here at some point and Justin Starkey comes up with a chance to impact it, he's the guy you circle in the lineup that cannot beat you. Cole Jenkins was the second leading hitter on this team. He hit 350, also a double-digit home run guy and also a 50 RBI guy. Cole Garrett, 350 last year as well. Trey Morgan, who's also going to start on the mound as we established, 345. These are legitimate guys. The one thing I left out that this VMI team does very well and ranked very highly in the NCAA last year, I left out kind of on purpose to separate it and talk about it right now. They run big time. VMI led the nation last year in stolen bases. They stole 192 bases. Their leading base stealer last season was Ty Swaim with 35. And then there's that man again, Justin Starkey, right behind him at 32. So if you need any more, reason that guy is a legitimate draftable dude, Starkey, hit for average, hit for power. He's got the speed, great base runner, all of that wrapped into one. He is a very, very talented player, and this team as a whole, very, very talented player. So, again, I look at it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different guys in the starting lineup, over 25 steals last year. 4 of them are back. It's going to be a big test for whomever LSU decides to put behind the plate today, I should say. Whomever LSU decides to put behind the plate today, this afternoon, whether that's Brady Neal or Alex Milazzo, they're going to have to keep that running game in check against VMI. And Thatcher Hurd is going to have to do a nice job of holding runners on when they do reach. The battery for LSU is going to be under a microscope in that game tomorrow. So that's something very, very keen to keep an eye on. Now, that's the matchup that's going to decide the baseball game, in a sense, because I also think LSU is going to be able to score a lot of runs. When I look at this VMI pitching staff, they were not good last year. We kind of touched on it a little bit already earlier in the show about how in flux their rotation was. I mean, Roberto Velasquez started the season as their Friday night guy. He lost his role there. Eventually, Nathan Light supplanted him. Nathan Light is no longer on the team. That's the other thing. They've lost a good chunk of some of their best pitchers from last year. Will Lopez, it looks like he got hurt, honestly, earlier in the year, but that ended his career. But he had a 1.42 ERA. He was going to be very good. JT Inskeep had the second best ERA on the team at 4.24. He is no longer there. So that shows you, again, the lack of effectiveness that they had. As a staff last year, VMI pitched to an ERA of 7.33, and the opponent hit 307 off of them as a staff. LSU will have plenty of opportunity against these guys. While some of their top-end arms maybe aren't back, they do return a good chunk from last year's pitching staff. They obviously need to take a big step. The same way we're going to get an answer on Thatcher Hurd and the LSU pitching staff early in this game against that VMI lineup, same to be said for them. Obviously, they don't have the same expectation level maybe of that panning out, but they're going to get tested against that LSU lineup. So, and it's also on the other side of that coin with LSU, how advanced, how ahead is this lineup in a sense? I don't think, and this is what I mean by that. I don't think if LSU goes out there and puts up 15 runs this afternoon against VMI, everybody's going to go, man, they've flipped the switch. They've just reloaded that lineup. Omaha, national championship number 8, let's go, right? That's not what I mean. But it's a measuring stick to the extent of that on paper is not a very good pitching staff. And if you do struggle, doesn't mean the season's over. We're not going to go jump off the bridge. There's none of that in there. But it does show you and potentially illustrate what we've been talking about, where, okay, it might just take them a little bit longer to come along. So there will be no sweeping generalization made about LSU's offense off of this game one way or the other, but I think in a way it can be a measuring stick to say, okay, that's kind of where they are. If they do go out and score 15 runs or whatever this afternoon, again, it's not they're back, whatever. It's, okay, that's they're still able to do what they should do. That's a step in the right direction of finding the footing with this lineup early in the season. So that's what I mean with a measuring stick there. So I'm absolutely interested to watch that. Now, let's zero in on a couple of guys that are back and that did have nice years. One of them that we'll start with is Jack Thompson. So Jack Thompson is their best returning pitcher from a numbers-wise, especially when you look at ERA. The ERA was 4.79. He's a junior righty, good size, man, 6'1", 185, has pitched in an SEC environment before, pitched twice out of the bullpen against Mississippi State last season. We know what Duty Noble is, right? That's a hell of a place to go do some baseballing, and he handled that environment well. Pitched very well against Mississippi State, actually, in that. I told you 2 innings. Let's take it a step further. If this would load once again, 2 shutout innings with only 1 hit given up. So he's formidable from the right side. Again, not an overpowering guy, just 26 strikeouts in 32 innings, so not overpowering Jack Thompson, but their most trusted reliever, led the team in appearances last year with 25, and he's back. So that's somebody I fully expect LSU to run into this afternoon is Jack Thompson. At the back end of their bullpen, this might not totally come into play in this one, provided LSU, gets out to the lead that we think that they can. But Will Riley is the back end of the bullpen guy for VMI. At least he was last year. Led the team with 6 saves, 23 appearances, which was tied for second on the team. 46 innings. He is the one guy that can really kind of blow it by you, that can run the strikeout total up, 62 of them in 46 innings. So file that away with Will Riley. And a guy, high leverage, who they trust an awful lot. Another big 6-foot righty going into a redshirt junior season. The last guy I'll touch on is Hunter Sipe. Hunter Sipe, also 23 appearances last year. But look, the numbers were nothing. They were nothing to write home about. He was 1-3, an ERA just below 7, 21 strikeouts in 36 in a third innings, and the opponent hit 344 off of him. So he's a guy they want to obviously to take the next step, but it's just going to be a question of if he can. LSU should be able to score a lot of runs this weekend against VMI in the 2 games that they play, because I don't expect that pitching staff to take some giant step forward. But those are the 3 guys that they counted on the most out of the bullpen last year, and they're all 3 back. So you would imagine in a game against the defending national champions, they're going to throw their best bullets at you as much as they can. So it wouldn't surprise me to see any or all 3 of those guys later this afternoon at Alex Box Stadium, Skip Bertman Field. So that kind of wraps up the VMI preview a little bit. Again, LSU's pitching versus that lineup is the matchup I'm most intrigued to see, because I think LSU's offense will be able to score, although I also think it will be a nice measuring stick for them to just be like, okay, they're right on schedule. This is a step in the right direction, or it might actually take the time that we're thinking to bring that unit along. Let's move on to Central Arkansas, and then we'll wrap it up with some overall thoughts on the weekend and a prediction. So Central Arkansas, the Bears, LSU faced them last season in a midweek game. Tigers won that one 10-4, kind of going away. Really, honestly, Central Arkansas took a lead in the 4th, and then LSU separated in the 4th, 5th, and 6th innings, and just never looked back. Don't take it personally, Central Arkansas. They did that to a lot of teams last year. They were very good. You might have heard. So ASUN, they come out of the ASUN, picked to finish 8th in a 12-team league this year. Also a losing record for the Central Arkansas Bears last season. They finished it up 23-31 as a group. They were very much just the middle of the pack team. They weren't great offensively. They weren't great on the mound. They were just kind of there. They also did not have a rotation set. They did have Jesse Barker, and he is back. And his first team All-ASUN, absolutely their ace. The good news is LSU will not see him. He will pitch later tonight against VMI, and you won't run into him. So who will you run into? Let's talk the pitching matchup, shall we? For LSU, we know it will be Luke Holman, junior right-hander, making his Tiger debut. That will be on Saturday, tomorrow. 7-4 was Holman last year at Alabama with a 3.67 ERA. Fired 81 innings, walked 31, and struck out 87. Fired up to see Luke Holman make his debut. We talked an awful lot about him on yesterday's show when we gave our final pitching preview, so the remarks on Holman will kind of be brief. He'll face a lineup that returns five players out of it from last year, so there's enough of a veteran presence there where it'll be a nice test for him. Not to the scale of VMI, that was a top 5 offense, and can impact the game in so many different ways, on the base paths and whatnot. But a nice test. Really just want to see Holman go out there and pound the strike zone ultimately. But we'll get more into that in our overall what we want out of the weekend here for LSU. So it'll be Holman making his LSU debut, and we're fired up to see that. On the mound for Central Arkansas, that will be sophomore right-hander Coleman McCray. So McCray is coming off of a freshman year where he pitched very well. What you want to see from a stock righty. I mean, 6'2", 200 pounds, looks the part for sure. Only made 14 appearances last year as a freshman, only 26 innings. 2 of them were starts, but the numbers were pretty good, man. 3-1, a 4.5 ERA. The opponent hit just 235 off of McCray. He walked 15 and struck out 27 in those 26 innings. He looks like a very nice pitcher. To turn in those type of numbers as a true freshman in college is big. It makes a lot of sense when you look at that, and then you look at everything that they lost, why you move him into that number 2 spot behind Jesse Barker. So it makes a ton of sense. I'm excited to see what he's got. Again, it'll be a hell of a test for him going up against this LSU lineup. For what it's worth, normally we can get a little bit more in depth on these scouting reports for pitchers, give you some of their pitches and tendencies and things like that. It's opening day, and the film stash is not that deep on the Virginia Military Institute in Central Arkansas. So you'll have to forgive me there on that, and look forward to that a little bit more as we get later in the season. But Coleman McCray is who LSU will take their swings against when they face Central Arkansas tomorrow. Let's talk now about some key players on offense and in the bullpen for the Bears, and then we will get to what we're looking for from LSU and a series prediction, and we will get out of here and send you off into opening day. So when you look at Central Arkansas, we told you 5 hitters, 5 of their position players returned from last year. 3 of their top 5 hitters return. You have Reed Bauman, infielder, hit 297 last year. He's back. Drew Sturgeon hit 296 last season. He's back. A.J. Mendelia hit 295 last year. He is back. So those are going to be the 3 big bats to really keep an eye on. And then there's also Mason King, who hit 286 last year, and he is back. Tanner Leonard, Cade Seldom Ridge, those guys also back from last year's team. So I guess it's really 6 players that return for Central Arkansas. Again, it's not a team that they don't really do anything extremely well offensively, right? Like if you go back and what we just said about VMI hit for average and they stole a lot of bases. Those were 2 things they did very well. Central Arkansas last year, they don't steal. They stole 94 bases, which okay. And that's a good number. I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, they're a threat on the base paths. I mean, a lot of it came from one guy. That was Mason King with 21. It's not what we saw at VMI where there were 5 guys that had over 25 steals. So I mean, they hit 56 home runs last year. That was a school record, and 30 of them are gone. So again, they're not going to run the ball out of the yard on you or anything like that. They hit 269. They're not this great hit for average team. It should be a day where LSU's pitchers are able to feast when they face Central Arkansas on Saturday and on Monday. But there are veteran hitters in the lineup, so you can't take anything for granted there. On the mound, when we go back and look at a couple of guys who have returned, they lost, outside of Jesse Brady, they lost the guy who had the 2nd best ERA, the 3rd best ERA, and the 4th best ERA on this team. So when you look at them, Jesse Barker is the only pitcher that returns for Central Arkansas with an ERA below 4, and you won't see him. Now, Lucas Greer turned in a very respectable season in limited work, only 5 appearances in 13 innings. They're looking for him to take a big step. Trent Gregson is really the guy to highlight here. Gregson led the team in appearances with 19 and was pretty darn good. 43 and 2/3 innings, a 4.33 ERA, struck out 40. The opponent hit just 213. LSU did see Gregson for what it's worth in that game in the regular season, and he actually pitched the best out of every pitcher that they ran out there. So he was able to put LSU in a chokehold. Granted, game was a little bit out of hand at that point, but 3 innings, just 1 run, it was unearned, and he struck out 3 as well. So look for him to definitely get a shot against LSU just because of the success he had last year, and he was their most trusted arm out of the bullpen. Again, the 19 appearances that led the team, and the results were pretty darn good. Mason Griffin is the other guy I would highlight. He's back, 18 appearances last year, so second on the team. Also led the team in saves with 3, and can run it past you a little bit. 34 strikeouts in 26 innings. That does stand out, and it was an ERA in the high 4s. So he was pretty darn good as well. And then after that, those are their most experienced guys that return out of the bullpen. After that, the next most experienced guy who's back looks like it's Coleman McRae, who now has moved into the starting rotation. And from there, you get to Tate Bussey and Peyton Windham, neither of who had very good seasons. LSU also saw Windham in that game in the regular season last year, and they got him for 2 runs in a third of an inning. So they had plenty of success against this Central Arkansas team, and I expect them to kind of have more. I think if I'm being honest, and I might be totally wrong about this, but I think if I'm being honest, I think VMI actually provides the stiffer challenge to LSU because of that lineup. I look at Central Arkansas, and again, I only have last year to go off of, but they lost 3 of their top 4 pitchers, and they didn't ever really do anything exceedingly well offensively. So maybe they take a giant step going into this season. That remains to be seen. But if I'm looking at the 2 teams and I see the one that I think could challenge LSU more, I think it's VMI more than Central Arkansas. All right, those are your previews on the teams. Let's talk about what we want to see from LSU this weekend. Let's start on the mound. First and foremost, I want to see LSU throw strikes. Keep that walk number down. When LSU got into trouble last year, it wasn't because teams hit them all over the yard. It was because of the walks. I think we all remember that. Y'all, the opponent only hit 225 off of LSU last season. That was top 2 in the Southeastern Conference. The problem was the free passes. So I want to see everybody that LSU runs out there this week. I'm not saying they can't walk anybody. Walks are going to happen. It's baseball, and on top of that, it's college baseball. But I want to see it kept within reason. Like, I want to see Thatcher Hurd pound the strike zone. I want to see Luke Holman pound the strike zone. That's something that both those guys did very, very well in their starts in the scrimmages in the fall and here in the winter. Pound the strike zone. When you get into the bullpen, same thing. And it's not just for today, it's for the whole weekend. So when you see a guy like Christian Little come in, pound the strike zone. Griffin Herring, pound the strike zone. Nate Ackenhausen, pound the strike. Like anyone. Justin Lohr, Gavin Guidry, pound the strike zone. That's what I'm after from LSU pitching this weekend. Because I think they're going to be really, really hard to hit, just like they were last year. Can you keep the free passes in check? Walk, hit batter, whatever. Can you keep it in check? That's going to be massive this weekend and going forward. But first and foremost, because I think this staff can be so good, and I think that's one of the only things that can actually hold them back, would be free passes. So let's make sure we have that in check. The other thing, I want to see who's the first right-handed reliever, not named Gavin Guidry, to take a step and emerge. That's what I want to see. It's not going to be set this weekend, but which of them can take that step, that first step towards maybe being the one to emerge? Is it Christian Little? Is it Sam Dutton? You know, I mean, is it Micah Bucknam? Or is he more the midweek guy right now? Like, that's one thing I want to see because they're very left-handed heavy in that bullpen. Who can be the right-handed reliever not named Gavin Guidry to kind of take that step, that first step to emerging as being a legitimate option. And I want to see Cam Johnson. Damn it, I want to see Cam. I have missed every single one of that kid's scrimmage outings. I want to see Cam Johnson. I will be out there all throughout the weekend. I can't wait to get eyes on Cam Johnson. So that's what I want to see for LSU on the mound. Offensively for LSU, good at bats, consistent at bats. I'm very curious to see how they stack the lineup. If there's a change to offensive philosophy in here, if they're out there trying to mash the baseball, because I think I've made myself perfectly clear. I think LSU is going to be able to mash the baseball plenty this year. I think there will be 100 home runs on this team. I think there is plenty of gap power and plenty of doubles to be had on this team. But how do they manufacture runs? That's going to be key. You've heard me say it ad nauseum already this preseason. It's something that last year's team was so good at. This team has that ability to, and I want to see if they can enact it. And we've gone through examples, whether it was the most recent one in that scrimmage of Hayden Travinski not trying to do too much. And that brings me to Hayden Travinski. Protection for Tommy White. I want to see who gets the first crack at it, and I think it is going to be Hayden Travinski, and I want to see how it goes. A guy like Mac Bingham, can he carry over the success that he was having in the scrimmage into the regular season? I think that he will. He's a very veteran player, so I'm not too worried about that, but that's a note that I want to see. Jared Jones. How's it going with the breaking ball? The last time I saw him in a scrimmage, 1 for 3, no strikeouts, and roped a breaking ball in a fastball count down the left field line for a double. More of that, and Jared Jones will never leave this lineup. So that's some individuals as a whole, consistent at bats, good at bats, competitive at bats, and how they approach scoring offense, how they approach moving the ball, as Jay Johnson likes to say. This is our first look at them, so it's all very generic things, I understand, but it's because it's our first look at them. Once we see them play in game-like atmospheres more, we can get more in-depth on certain things, but those are the individuals that I'm very excited to see. Jones, Bingham, and Travinski. And, hey, here's to hoping Tommy White hits a home run this weekend as well. Everybody will love that, right? Get the Tommy Tanks gift back out there on Twitter. So that's what I'm looking for from LSU this week. Series prediction. I like LSU to get all 4. I think VMI, as I said earlier, proposes a very interesting challenge with their lineup, but I think LSU can score with them. That's not the problem. That's why I think you could see higher scoring games potentially between those two, but I like LSU to come out on top. And if LSU can just shut down that lineup, that's going to be great. But I like LSU to get all 4. They're the vastly more talented team. They're the vastly better baseball team here. They're playing at home. There'll be a bunch of fanfare. That's, I guess, another thing. Can they keep the emotion in check early later today? Because even with the 2 o'clock start, I expect a great crowd to welcome the defending champions. You have the fan fest out there all day long. So, I mean, the fanfare around it is something. Can they keep those emotions in check, keep the heartbeat down? That's something too. But look, I think that they do, and I think LSU. I think LSU gets all 4 because, again, they're vastly more talented. They're vastly better, and in a situation where these teams coming from, at least VMI, definitely coming from the north, even Central Arkansas to an extent. They haven't been outside as much. They're not going to make the routine play like LSU should be able to make. So those little nuances aren't going to separate the game, win or lose you these baseball games. At least I don't think. But what they can do is provide separation for LSU in the ball game, in the ball games, I should say, if that makes sense. And throw strikes. Don't, especially against a VMI team. Don't give them any opportunity. So I like LSU to get all 4. That's your preview. Go enjoy opening day. It's finally here once again. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Musso Matthew. That's greatly appreciated. We have a lot of fun there throughout the regular season. I enjoy interacting with everybody on Twitter. I think it's a great place. Is it toxic as hell? Yes, but I think it's a great place. And on Facebook as well, link up with me, Matt Musso. That's the page I'd prefer you to follow there. So link up there as well, man. It's here, opening day. Let's get to it. Let's watch the Tigers play some actual baseball. We'll be back here on Monday to recap the first 3 games of a 4-game week right here on Musso at the Box.